So let's talk about a couple of numbers. The first one is 13, as in 13%. 13% is how much overall living costs have increased on average in the past year. The other number I want to talk about, 460, as in $460. That's how much more an American family is paying per month for the same household goods and fuel that they purchased a year ago. So how do you think that's impacting your residents? On top of students and parents already dealing with inflation, off-campus student housing is projected to see about an average of a 9% increase in their rents that they're going to be paying this fall versus what they were paying when they moved in last fall. And we all know most parents have not received a 9 to 13% increase in pay. So you combine that with job insecurity that's coming with this recession that we now find ourselves in. Yes, I know there's plenty of jobs out there, but if you're reading beyond the headlines, you're going to see the following. Microsoft is laying off. Google has implemented a hiring freeze. Here's a recent stat I read. In May of 22, 36% of small retailers reported they were not able to pay their rent. Listen, in addition to student housing, I also spent a couple of years as a commercial property manager overseeing retail centers and office buildings. I never had a commercial tenant that paid their rent late that didn't call me in advance and say, Wes, I hope to pay the rent by the end of the month, but I had to make payroll and business has just been down. They're going to make payroll before they pay their rent. What happens when they can't make payroll? Folks, I think we've got a bumpy road ahead of us. How long that's going to last, I'm not really sure. But what are you going to do when you have a parent or a student come in and say, I hope to pay rent by the end of the month. We've just got a cash flow problem right now. Wouldn't you like to give them an option that gives you the money today and allows the tenant to pay in weekly payments? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about what has become known as a flexible rent payment option. This has become a requested service from prospects for the past few years just because of the gig economy. So if your property is not offering a flex payment option, not only may you lose a tenant to eviction, but you may also be losing prospects. This summer, I've been working with a company called Qira, that's spelled Qira, to basically help them develop a flex payment option built for students and their parents, and it's available for everyone now. In addition to the Flex product, they also have some other financial services for the student housing industry, including one I'm really excited about. It's a line of credit option for properties who may need just a little extra capital to get through the next summer turn or some other needed CapEx project. So for more information, go to studenthousing.com/Qira. Again, that's studenthousinginsight.com/QIRA. Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees, and I am thrilled you have found this podcast. If you're new to this audience or maybe tuning in for the first time in a while, we want you to know Student Housing Insight is not just a podcast. Student Housing Insight is a community and a networking platform focused on making student housing better. And if that's your goal and it's your passion, I also want to invite you to download our mobile app. It's called SHI Connect. Just search SHI Connect in your Apple or Google App Store, download it, create a profile, and join in on the discussion. The SHI Connect app is designed to not only encourage connections among student housing professionals, but it's also to be a place where you can join specific groups for your region. For Canada and the UK, we also have groups set up for you. We also have groups set up for DEI, technology, maintenance, marketing, and leasing. And hey, if you think we should add a group, just send me a DM through the app. Yep, we have direct messaging as well. All right, so how was Turn, everyone? You know, I've enjoyed seeing everyone's post on SHI Connect and LinkedIn about all the victories and just how teams have just come together to get the job done this summer. I've also enjoyed the private messages that some of you have sent me asking for advice, or, they wanted my turn board template, or, where they could get last minute furniture or cleaning vendors. I think the best one by far was a message from a manager, a very experienced manager at that, who said, Wes, we're only 80% pre-lease, so I only turned about 85% of my beds. But the university just called and asked if we could do a master lease for 100 beds. I've got it, but I've already sent my vendors back to Atlanta, and the university wants to move in 3 days. So the issue was the university had a dorm that got really moldy over the summer due to a leak that the university didn't even realize they had until the early arrivals of, band members and athletics when they showed up, and then they started getting sick. For some reason, this seems to be happening every year now. This is at least 3 years in a row I've heard this. But anyway, if you ever find yourself in that fortunate situation where you can be the hero to both, the university and your investors, just remember, you did nothing to cause this problem. So therefore, don't oversell. Just tell the university, what the situation is, and, how they can work with you to make sure these displaced students of theirs are as happy as can be. Fortunately for this manager, the university said, they just needed spot painting done. They would actually send RAs and some other staff over to help clean. They also brought over like 5 steam cleaning machines for the carpet, and they got it ready in time, and the students were happy. I think mainly because they now have all private bathrooms, which they were not going to have that if they moved into the dorm. So those things, they always work themselves out. Just take a deep breath and just figure it out. So now that turn is over, we get to start all over again. I hope you and your teams get a few days of rest before your marketing plans go into action. And for those of us who are looking to get some networking done in the next month, in hopes of selling or buying properties or securing new management agreements, or I know many of you listening to this are service providers, so I know you're also looking to sell products and services to the industry. So the rest of this podcast is dedicated to you, because we're discussing the fall conference lineup. I'm so glad that conferences are back in play. So let's talk about what's on tap. There are 3 big student housing conferences just in September, and that's what we're going to spend most of today talking about. First up is Bisnow. They are hosting their annual student housing conference on the 13th in Philadelphia. The next week in Toronto, Canada, CAP-RE has a return of their North American Investments in Student Housing Conference. And then third, the last week of September, NMHC is hosting their 20th annual Student Housing Conference in Miami, Florida. If you've been a listener of this podcast, you know that I actually attended the first annual Student Housing Conference by NMHC 20 years ago. So anyway, while you guys were busy with turn, I sat down with the organizers of 2 of these events to discuss what they have on tap for their conference. So let's start with Bisnow. A couple weeks ago, I sat down with Kara Breazeale, who is organizing the event. So let's hear that interview now. Kara, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's the conference world has just been crazy the past 2 years, and I'm sure you have felt the brunt of that. And it's so exciting to actually see so much of these events that we used to go to finally start coming back. So
yeah, absolutely.
So super excited to talk to you a little bit about the Bisnow Student Housing Conference coming up in Philadelphia. But before we actually even get started with that, maybe you could just give a little bit of background on who Bisnow is and what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bisnow is a digital media and events company specific to commercial real estate. So while we're talking about student housing today, that is just one of the many sectors in commercial real estate that we cover as a business. And we operate in 42 markets domestically, Canada, the UK, and Ireland. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit more today about the student housing aspect of Bisnow.
Let's talk about, the date and location. What does the audience need to know, when it comes to the event coming up in September?
Absolutely. So this student housing and university development event is going to take place on Tuesday, September 13th. It will be held at the W Hotel in Philadelphia, and it's going to start at 9:30 p.m. and run to about 3.
That's the one thing I love about events that you guys put on, because it is, so much of what we do in the commercial real estate world, but, especially in student housing as well. We go to these events to network, and I feel like a lot of other conferences kind of, they try to make it sound like it's going to be way more of a, how's the best way of putting it? There's all this great knowledge that you can get, and you guys come right out and say, yeah, there's good knowledge, but it doesn't need to be spread out over 2 or 3 days. We can actually take care of that in one day. You can fly in, fly out if you're, not from the local area. And that's the great thing I love about what you guys do with this conference. Talk a little bit about the speakers and the panelists that you've got lined up.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to be hearing from investors, developers, architects, and universities throughout the entire program. And just to name a few, we have Greystar, Landmark Properties, American Campus Communities, the Scion Group, WDG Architects, University of Delaware, and many more. But we will be discussing topics around rent prices, the drivers behind the sector's growth, what is needed in terms of design and technology to meet students' needs, and how hybrid school affected off-campus housing and all of the changes within the sector post-pandemic.
Oh, fantastic. So obviously this isn't the first one that you guys have done for student housing.
Correct.
But as I mentioned earlier, this is probably the first time in 2 years. I think has it been 2 years?
So we did have this program last year after a 2-year break. We were doing virtual events for a few years there, as you can imagine.
So how many years has it been that Bisnow has put this specific conference on?
We've been hosting this conference and promoting it to a national audience since 2015. It's always been hosted in Philadelphia, which is exciting that we're going to be hosting it there again this year.
Well, so for the folks that are listening that may want to potentially help sponsor or exhibit for this event, what kind of opportunities are available? And I know it's coming up here pretty shortly, but is there a deadline for doing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have several different opportunities for companies to really get in front of developers and investors within the student housing space. And there's a few different angles that we look to, like thought leadership opportunities and branding and even some lead generation. But if there is interest in diving deeper, there's still certainly time. I will say not much time, but we can always make something happen. But I'd really want to talk to those companies and see the best way for them to utilize our network based on their company's goals and initiatives.
Oh, great. So, I'm sure everybody's wondering, okay, well, what's the registration? And, is there any kind of early bird registration? And if you could walk through that really quick, that would be great.
Sure. So a ticket for this event is $159, and you can register using the link on the Student Housing Insight website under the calendar section. And we actually have a code for you to use for 20% off at checkout, and that code is INSIGHT. So you'll just type that in at checkout, and it'll give you 20% off that $159 price tag.
Well, thanks so much for offering that to our audience. That's fantastic. In fact,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna call a few folks and let them know that as soon as we get off.
Awesome.
Anything else with the event that you want to talk about? And we'll talk a little bit about where they can get more information. But anything else you want to mention before we move on?
Sure. I just want to mention that this was an incredible event last year. We've hosted it, like you said, for many years, and we've got some new exciting conversations to bring to the table this year with a university development focused panel, as well as those student housing conversations. So we're really excited, and we hope that you can join us.
Well, fantastic. Well, the registration link, we will definitely put it in the show notes along with that coupon code. But it's also on the SHI website under our calendar and events section. So you can always go there and take a look for it. If they want to go and, just directly to the website, if they don't see those links, it's just bisnow.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Bisnow.com. You can go under our calendar tab in the Philadelphia section, and you will see this event along with many others.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it so much. Again, I love how you guys approach this, because it really is a focus on networking, which is so important, especially this time of the year. And, everybody's kind of finished up where they're at from a leasing standpoint. So, it's a great opportunity to come together and talk about, how things ended up, for those looking to, sell or buy properties. It's a great time for everybody to come together and meet and have those side meetings as well. So thanks so much for putting this on for our industry. And we look forward to seeing you on the 13th.
Thank you, Wes. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Again, big thanks to Kara for her time, and a big thanks to Bisnow for hooking our audience up with that 20% discount code. Again, we'll put that in the show notes, and it will also be on the website, but use the discount code INSIGHT in order to get 20% off. So next, let's talk about what I call the Canadian Student Housing Conference, but officially it is titled the North American Investments in Student Housing Conference. I didn't get a chance to interview the organizer, Brian Kibosh, about this event, but I do have some great things to say about it. One, if you're in Canada, especially the eastern side of the country, you've got to go. This is a must go. I don't care if you are a site manager or a CEO. Go to this event if you are involved in the Canadian student housing market. Listen, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in this industry for going on 25 years now, and I've seen a lot. And where Canada is at in the student housing world these days, it feels very much the way it did for me in the late 90s. And that's why I'm encouraging everyone to go. Not because of the content, but because it is so important in this phase of the industry to build a tight community that is willing to share and to discuss the hurdles and the things that you guys are facing in Canada. This is only the second time this event has happened. The first was in 2019, between the pandemic and Canada's, shall we say, response to the pandemic. Sorry, Canada, but it was a bit ridiculous. But anyway, as I was saying, COVID kept this event from happening the past 2 years. So I'm excited to see it come back. I did attend in 2019. In fact, I was on a panel. For those of you who don't know, I've done some student housing work in Canada. I had a blast. I'll never do it again. And for my peeps up there, and I know you're listening, go to this conference. But yeah, Brian hosted a great event in 2019, and I think this can really become a huge conference in Canada in the years to come. So make sure you're a part of it. Anyway, we'll post a link for that in our show notes as well. And of course, as always, you can find links to these events and our calendar on our events page of the website, which is studenthousinginsight.com. All right, the next one we are talking about is NMHC, and not just NMHC's Student Housing Conference in September, but in this interview that I'm about to play, we also talk about OpTech, which has become a huge, huge conference. They're now having to do that conference in Vegas. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get to the interview. Here's the interview with Dave Borsos and Matthew Berger from NMHC. Well, Matthew and Dave, welcome back to the Student Housing Insight podcast. How are you guys doing?
Wes, we're doing great. Thank you so much for having us back again this year. And also, thank you so much for your leadership with Shop Talk and just your overall leadership for the student housing industry. You've really done a really great job, and we so appreciate it, and we really love working with you.
Well, I appreciate it, and thanks to you guys for, I think you guys were pretty much there from the first one, when it was started back in 2020 as just the student housing COVID call. And, the leadership and the information that you guys have been able to provide the industry has just been a huge help to everyone. And so I keep having having conversations with folks and, within the industry, and we'll talk about like the conference that we're talking about today, or, what type of organizations they should be a part of. And, I've told them the membership for NMHC is, it's not light, but it has proven its value over the past 2 years for certain. So thanks so much for what you guys have done from that. And I'm excited to talk about what I believe is the 20th NMHC Student Housing Conference.
Indeed. We are super excited for this conference coming up September 28th to the 30th in Miami Beach. We think it's going to be a wonderful venue, and we are finalizing the program even as we speak. And we just can't wait to really greet the entire industry in just a couple months' time now.
Yeah, it's been great to kind of get back to the normal, calendar of events throughout the year. Last year, between having Interface in July, then, having NMHC in September, it was tough. It feels like it kind of all ran together. And so I'm glad that we're able to kind of spread it out a little bit more throughout the year now. And of course, last year was in Huntington Beach in California. This year, you've picked another beach, South Beach in Miami.
Coast to coast.
Yeah. And, last year, I don't think anybody was able to go out to the beach, or certainly not into the ocean, because of the tanker spill that happened that same week. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'll buy a rabbit's foot. I want to make sure we don't have to deal with a hurricane this year. But I think every time you guys have been in Florida for this thing, we end up having really great weather. So I'm looking forward to it. But tell us a little bit, about the venue and those things that we have to look forward to before we start talking about some of the content.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll start on that. For those of you who are listening and been to South Beach in Miami, it's a great place to be. Obviously, it makes it a little bit more difficult to sit inside and listen to some panels, but I think if you do come, the agenda we put together this year, I think we're really thrilled with this, and some of the participants we've already gotten to say yes to come and speak. But this is a great hotel. It's a great location, a lot of great activities nearby as well. As you mentioned, we hit the coast as well, and we're right on Miami Beach. So great venue. I've been there quite a number of times with different conferences. So this hotel knows how to handle conferences, and we'll do that with our conference as well.
I'm definitely looking forward to that location. I did not get to go the last time you guys had it at the Lowe's, and looking forward to it.
So one thing I'm going to plug, looking forward to the 21st, we're going to Vegas. And we have a triple header for NMHC next year. Our annual conference is going to be in Las Vegas. Our student housing conference will be in Las Vegas, and our OpTech conference, which I think a lot of listeners as well have attended that fantastic conference that our colleagues put on, will also be in Vegas. So we're we're going to be frequent flyers to Vegas next year.
I was going to say, it sounds like maybe NMHC should just get a condo out there for you guys. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about, I am excited about next year being out in Vegas, because I don't think we've had any, it's been a while since we've had any student housing conferences out in Vegas. So I think that will be really great. But let's talk about what's coming up this year. What kind of, before we talk about topics, let me ask this question. For those that are listening, maybe, this is their first year or two within student housing. Maybe they haven't heard of the National Multi-Housing Council. I think, I think it'd probably be great if you guys could give just a quick overview of what NMHC is involved with. And then for this event, what's kind of the perfect avatar for attending this event? I see a lot of the C-suite there. I see a lot of folks that are involved in the operations as well as on, the partnership side with universities. So I'd really like just kind of get that from you guys before we start talking about topics.
Yeah. So I just quickly, in terms of NMHC itself, so we are a Washington-based advocacy organization that represents the broad apartment and student housing industry. So we're a federal-facing advocacy group, which means we talk to Capitol Hill about legislative issues and anything that may impact the industry. We talk to regulators as well for any regulations that may impact the industry. And so, these are things that we cover everything from soup to nuts. So Matthew and I, while we both co-lead our student housing vertical for NMHC, we also wear different hats as well. And I head up capital markets, and Matthew heads up all of our tax-related work. But we also participate in our finance committee, workforce housing. We've got technology committees. From A to Z, we really kind of cover the spectrum of anything from the idea of building a property through financing it, construction, delivery, buy and sell of that, how you operate it, anything that impacts are things that we look at to see if there is anything on the horizon from a legislative or regulatory perspective that may have an impact on the industry. And we have approximately 1,700 member firms that participate, and anywhere from the largest owner and operators to maybe the medium size. So typically we're kind of the larger owner operator managers and service providers in the industry. It may have a large regional or national presence.
I was just going to address the second part of your question with regard to the key participants at our student housing conference. Really, we are looking, our conference really does seek to attract the industry's leadership, in terms of, executives at member companies, in addition to those entities that provide services to our to those member companies, be they financial institutions and other kind of vendors. But what we're really trying to do is foster some really great networking opportunities between the key decision makers, between and among key decision makers at these top student housing companies and those entities that help make sure that the companies are able to conduct their business operations smoothly and efficiently.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about what's on tap for this year. Let's talk about some of the topics, maybe some of the general sessions. What's on tap? What can attendees expect to be covered this year?
So Dave, please obviously jump in. But I think that, right now we have a pretty healthy industry, but clearly we have some very challenging economic conditions that are confronting the nation in terms of rising interest rates in particular. So one thing our conference is going to explore is how those economic conditions might impact the industry on a going forward basis. In addition to that, we also had a very significant transaction that is going to be closing here in the third quarter and should be closed by the time we convene in South Beach of ACC. So we're going to have Bill Bayless talk about the implications of that transaction, where the last public student housing company is going private, and what that means.
Yeah, I've kind of got a bet going on what's going to happen before uh, before NMHC? Is Elon Musk going to take Twitter private, or is ACC going to be private by that point? So yeah, that's going to be very unique for sure. I guess this is the first year, probably in 15 years, I guess, since there has not been a public REIT or REIT in the public space. So
very true, very true. And just to highlight some of the other things, obviously, as Matthew talked about, there will be some deeper dives regarding what investors are thinking about this class. Clearly, there's been a lot of demand and interest in the sector because it has performed well, but the volatility in the marketplace, whether it's on the investor or debt side, is something that we'll take some deep dives into as well. And then, again, you kind of hear a little bit of Washington insight, what we see on the horizon in terms of what things may be impacting the industry. Transactional activity is very, very important. And obviously, that buy and sell side, are people getting assets at the prices they want, or are they being able to sell them at the yield that they want? So again, some insights there. One of the things that has clearly been exceedingly important and certainly seems to be a hot button for lots of discussions, and that's ESG. And so the environmental, social, and governance mandates that investors are looking for, or regulators, clearly an extremely important point and topic for those who raise money. Investors are asking for that. So first time we'll have a panel on ESG. And so we're excited with some of the people who really embrace this and are in the middle of doing this. And so we will certainly look at that as an important aspect of it. And then you've got a broad brush of other things, whether it's operation, it's P3. We've got panels kind of covering a whole this entire sector. And so it really is a conference that I think will meet interest for a wide variety of people within the industry or those who are looking to learn more about the industry.
So tell me a little bit about the emerging, I believe it's the Emerging Leaders luncheon that's going to happen. I read the description and realized it was only for folks under 40. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to attend, but can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, we're super excited about this. We have Teresa Zapata, who leads Emerging Leaders for our student housing members, and she's going to be interviewing Donna Price. Nice. And I think it's just going to be a wonderful conversation about how Donna was able to build her company and be one of the foremost leaders in the industry. And I think she has an inspiring story, and I can't wait for her to share that story with our emerging leaders.
So that's actually an evening event, Wes. There's actually another luncheon, which it's our DEI lunch that we're have on Thursday afternoon.
That's right.
And the speaker there is somebody who his business has been involved in student housing, and that's Robert Byron, who's the chairman and co-CEO and co-founder of Blue Vista Capital, has been a longtime investor in the student housing space. Matthew and I ended up talking to Robert sometime last year, and some of the work that he's doing to support young businesses run by people of color or women, and he's raising $100 million fund.
Wow.
And putting the operational capacity of Blue Vista to support some of these businesses who may not have the right accounting systems in place, et cetera, or they may be able to try to buy a property, but they don't have the equity capital or the history behind that. And he's utilizing some of these funds and the balance sheet of Blue Vista to stand behind some of these companies. So he's going to talk about this initiative, which, if you are a small business, somebody who's a small business looking for capital, looking for somebody who's really willing to put up their money where their mouth is, this is a lunch that you should really attend.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Looking forward to that. So in the past, you guys have kind of used this event to put out, a white paper or some type of research document. I think last year was an update to the benchmark report where you guys kind of go through region by region and nationally, and kind of looking at the expense benchmarks within student housing. And anything this year that you guys are going to be presenting?
Matthew?
So thank you so much for highlighting the research. We take great pride in our student housing research. This year we are currently working on an affordability paper that's going to look at affordability within the student housing sector. While I cannot promise that paper is going to be done by the Student Housing Conference, it is currently we're already starting work, and it's currently in process. So even if we're not able to release it or have findings in time for the conference, I think it's going to be something that people are going to want to take a look at when it's ready. With regard to the benchmarking survey, we do that every other year. So we'll be returning to that in 2023.
Gotcha. So we'll be looking for that in Vegas. No, that's, I'm so glad you guys are doing that research on the affordability side, because that's been a huge thing, coming out of, with all the development that happened after the Great Recession, and, these projects just get closer to campus. So the real estate itself is more expensive, and they're building higher, and you've got these, big glass and steel structures, and that doesn't rent for cheap. And so, I think there have been some operators and owners that, have kind of taken advantage and found that niche in some of these markets where they are able to provide a more affordable product. And it'll be great to see that report once it comes out, and, give us a little bit more direction on, maybe some students that we're not serving well. So that's fantastic. Well, hey, I wanted, before I let you go, I did want to talk a little bit about, another conference that you guys have coming up that I love. Don't get to it as much as I would like to, but that's OpTech, which is out in Vegas this year. Tell us just a little bit of, what's on tap. When is it? Where exactly in Vegas is it? And anything else that you can share?
So the reason that OpTech moved to Vegas is because this conference has continued to grow. I would tell you from conversations that we have had with people within the industry that they view this as one of the best operational conferences you could possibly attend. So it's November 1st through the 3rd at the Wynn Resort in Las Vegas. If anybody on your operations team wants to kind of get the latest, the team here that puts this conference together is just class A. It every year just hits a home run. So we're looking forward to that, and they just have outgrown all the other venues. So it looks like they're going to be stuck in Vegas for a while, as far as we can tell. They're going to, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that they're going to be there next year, but they're going to be there this year as well. So again, another one, if you got the budget and the time, I would also highly encourage people to come to that, which we feel is a fantastic conference.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link in the show notes for the registration pages for both of those conferences. I do think it's that echo what you say. It has probably become one of the best operations led or based type of conference. Plus you've got, all of the prop tech and fintech that's being showcased there as well. And I think it's a great time that if you're trying to get your head around some of that stuff, I can't think of a better place to go and kind of, absorb it all and talk with the folks that, have had experience with some of the things, or they're testing out some of the things. It's great having kind of sidebar conversations with those folks that are, dealing with systems and that type of thing to, find out what's working for them, find out what's not working with them. So that is fantastic. Well, guys, I can't wait to see you again. It's September 28th through the 30th. We'll put the link in the show notes. Anything else you have to share with the group?
Once again, just really appreciate your leadership, and thanks for having us on.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate it, guys.
See you in Miami.
Well, guys, there you have it. I hope to see you at one of these conferences in September. Make sure that you stop by and say, hey, would love to talk to you. If you've got ideas for the podcast, would love to talk about that as well. As Dave mentioned, we are still doing the industry monthly webinar that's called Shop Talk. It's typically the second Tuesday of each month, but for September, we're doing it on Thursday, the 15th, because I'll be at the Bisnow in Philly on the 13th. But you can get more info and register by going to shoptalk.info. Again, that website is shoptalk.info, and you can get more information there. Well, guys, that does it for me. Again, a big thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Qira. They are truly doing some awesome things. I've had a lot of fun working with them this summer and, kind of evolving their product into something that is going to be great for student housing. And we've actually got a Behind the Biz episode that we're doing with their new CEO that will be coming out next week, maybe this weekend. Anyway, so stay tuned for that, and we'll talk to you soon. Stay safe, everyone.